Who's that knocking at the door? It's all your friends, you filthy whore. Your husband's gone and we've got books and a bottle of wine to kill. It's Hollywood. It's books. It's gossip. I'm shook. It's memoirs. It's martinis. It's Studio 54. It's Fellini. It's Celebrity Book Club. Come read it while it's hot. Celebrity Book Club. Tell your secrets, we won't talk. Celebrity Book Club. No boys are allowed. Celebrity Book Club. Say it loud and proud. Celebrity Book Club.
Buzz me in, I brought the Cuervo.
Hey, best friend.
You freaking masshole, Stephen Phillips Horst.
Shut the fuck up, you fucking bitch. How's your mother?
I fucked her in a bath at Dunkin' Donuts last night.
So sorry, you were in a bath at Dunkin' Donuts, or was a bath of Dunkin'?
No, I did take out from Dunkies. I did the 64-ounce hot coffee because your ma likes it wicked hot. So I created kind of a jacuzzi atmosphere. Poured it into my bathtub. Yeah, then we got to making sweet, sweet love in there.
Oh, that's fun. I actually fucked your mother sideways over a pile of discarded Kelly's roast beef. And not the sandwiches, just the roast beef that was too expired to put in the sandwiches, and it was just a big pile behind like one of the Kellys off of Route 2, just in the parking lot at about 5 p.m.
Well, that sounds like a classier bed than the one I saw at your house last week. Hey, yo!
Oh, you're talking about my mother's aging Tempur-Pedic?
Yeah, you little bitch-ass Tempur-Pedic. Sleeping FAG, go to a pond for a week and then say, hey, Ma, can I come home and sleep in my Tempur-Pedic?
Listen, I still appreciated the nature and I understood what it means to live a simple life, even though I was on a Tempur-Pedic occasionally during that time.
So, yeah, I was just on the Cape and I brought a book with me to read. It's called...
Oh, you're reading books now, so you're a faggot.
No, I'm fucking wicked smart, okay? So now I can go to Harvard continuing education classes online on my Asus computer. My Asus.
Wow, good luck with your night school. Bet you're going to learn a lot, like how to suck cock.
Oh, yeah, what are you doing? Going to kindergarten? Learning how to shit for the first time? Look, let's get into it. This book I read on the Cape is called Walden Pond by this guy, Henry David Thoreau, or as you call him, Thoreau.
Okay, I don't know where you, Lily Murata, garnered your pronunciation of Thoreau. But you said throw every time. And every time you say it, you'll notice that people around you kind of raise an eyebrow, kind of cock a head a little.
What's wrong?
And they're just kind of like, sorry, what did you say? Throw?
It's like in My Cousin Vinny when the judge to Joe Pesci is like, what did you say? And he keeps on saying Utes. And then finally he goes, oh, I'm sorry, youths. So it's, okay, I guess, sorry, I'm a fast-talking city chica. I don't live by a pond, so I'm just trying to get words out. So I say Henry David Thoreau.
Just throwing out the words.
Throwing out the words. And I get that it's pronounced Thoreau.
I mean, it's soft.
Soft. So, yeah, we read Walden. By Henry David Thoreau.
You know, one of the pillars of American literature, I think you would say.
Absolutely. English class vibes over here.
English class vibes. You'll notice my book is full of pink highlighted passages. I did my homework.
You're like at Staples. You're like, I want the pink highlighter.
There's that thing when you get into English class and everyone does like the book check. And it's like if the cover goes up like this, then that means you've actually read it. But if it's just sitting flat, that means you've never cracked it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've never experienced that.
I feel like maybe you guys didn't read books at high school.
Okay, I'm sorry. As someone who went to high school, spitting distance from Walden Pond.
Did you read Walden in high school?
No.
We didn't either.
No, I had never read it.
But of course I'd heard of it.
Of course, it was nonstop. Walden this, Walden that.
And as I said to you, I was a little surprised when the girl at Strand had never heard of Walden, who was helping me find it. And when we were in the Thoreau area, she just goes, so is it about a guy named Walden?
It's just like, that is just insane because I'm like, the Strand is the, Thoreau probably would work at the Strand for just like 6 months and then quit.
If they 6 months and quit, but then talk about like how amazing it is to like surround yourself with literature. Because like in my mind, it's very like there's like Catcher in the Rye, To Kill a Mockingbird,
Walden,
like Great
Ulysses.
Gatsby, Ulysses. Like, but it's definitely like top 10 American literature.
Yeah.
But is it now so just like Da Vinci Code, Hunger Games?
Yeah, they're doing Hunger Games in English class.
But maybe we just know it way more because we're from New England.
I wonder because we're like massholes. And if you grew up in, say, California, are you reading like...
Didion.
Yeah.
Played us at Lay's.
And that was your original thing. And I mean, so for our listeners, I grew up going to Walden Pond.
Wow.
Very early on in my life. And it is, which he has, he made it this way. It is the crunchy mom pond to swim in. It is Patagonia. It is Tevas that you've had for 35 years. It is sunblock.
Yeah.
It is nerdy pale dad in a bucket hat that like now would go for a lot on grilled.
And it's the legacy of the book that's created that, obviously, because it's become synonymous with this idea of like simplify and be like a pretentious Whole Foods shopper and like, minimize your consumption and enjoy the resources around us. What I will say is, it's a pond. It's not.
It's a big pond.
Yeah, but.
It's a pond.
It's a pond.
Well, Walden Pond.
Yeah.
No one's denying that it's a pond, except for he calls it a lake sometimes in the book.
He says lake, and I think he's saying that like in a more old-fashioned way. What I do like is that he straight up admits that it's like a normal-ass boring pond.
Yes, but he also describes it, obviously, on end for an entire book.
No, it's 300 pages of descriptions of this pond. But there's, if I may, just...
Please.
The scenery of Walden is on a humble scale, and though very beautiful, it does not approach to grandeur, nor can it much concern one who has not long frequented it or lived by its shore. So he's like, if you don't really know about this pond, like, you wouldn't care. It's not giving, like, insane, fabulous lake. Like, I'm not trying to say it's insane, fabulous lake.
And he's not trying to, like, get other people to, like, come to this pond, even though, you know what he is? He is someone who's like, I went to an amazing dumpling place, and I'm actually not going to post about it.
And he's writing a post about how he's not going to post about it.
But then ends up like writing like a longer think piece about it. And then obviously people do end up coming.
Like trying to figure out what the dumpling place is. But he's just being like, and ultimately it's actually about finding your own dumpling place. And I'm not saying that this dumpling place is so amazing, but it's really just about spending time there.
It's about like searching for it and stuff.
In search of dumpling.
And I will say Walden Pond to me is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I will say it's less muck
than you might expect, or than your ex-girlfriend might expect. Please tell the story.
Yes. So took my ex-girlfriend, who's from Chicago, real city trick, to Walden Pond. And she was always like, oh, I really want to get in some nature. And I was like, perfect, I'll take you to Walden Pond, 5-minute drive from my dad's house. We go to Boston. I bring her there. She starts like getting kind of tense, and it's just instantly goes, this is fucking snake water. And I was like, no, we're gonna like walk this, because it's like as a teen, you like there's like the little baby beach, and then you can walk this path to like these like tiny little inlets where it's like you more like can smoke weed, and then like during the pond.
Badass.
And she the whole time was just like, hell no, snake water, I'm not going in this fucking snake water.
I mean, she's not wrong. I'm sure there's lots of little like garter snakes and little things hanging out in there.
Right. So that was a fail.
She's used to Lake Michigan.
Yes.
Stunning in its grandeur.
I don't think I've been to a good Lake Michigan spot. I feel like I only went to like the city beach, and I was just kind of comparing it to the ocean. And I was like, okay, what's the big deal at Lake Michigan? But then I see photos of like Mario Batali's house on Lake Michigan. It looks like the Caribbean.
What about Mario Batali's house looks like it's the Caribbean?
He has a house on Lake Michigan,
but
the water is so
the water's so clear,
baby blue and aqua.
Okay.
Once also, this is also so like crunchy mass. I was swimming with friend of the pod Sam in Walden Pond, and we noticed my photo teacher just in the water with us, and it's that thing when you like see a
teacher
teacher
outside of
school. And we're like whispering so loudly, being like, oh my gosh, is that Tony Loretti?
Oh, and you know, voices carry across the water.
Oh, absolutely. And then it's also like you're seeing this photo teacher like shirtless.
Yeah. And it was really sexual for you.
Extremely sexual.
And then you like snapped a photo, and like then he's in the darkroom developing photos like that you've taken of him.
They're really
nude.
like far away photos of him. So Walden, this book, neither of us had read before.
Yeah, shockingly.
It's shocking, but yet it was always there.
It's obvious. It has quite a stranglehold on the public imagination, or perhaps not quite as tense as maybe we thought.
Yeah.
But I think basically everyone gets the gist of the book, which is that it is this love letter to nature and simplifying your life.
It's not so back to the land per se.
No, because he's not so like you need to hunt and kill and like live your own life. He's more just like modern society is far too fast pace, and we are all basically like, you know,
what are we doing these
we're
things
not working
for?
to live, we're living to work, and all we do is like struggle and toil, and we're sad, and we just pay rent to our landlords. And you know, the structure of the book is like there's this whole, you know, very almost Marx-like manifesto in the whole first section, and then the rest of the book is like justifying why he's choosing to live in the woods for a year or two.
Yes, I think it was 6 months.
Well, no, it actually is 2 years, because like, and then towards the end he's like, and that was my first year, and then I did one more year that was basically the same thing as that year.
So he at one point says he only works for 6 weeks out of the year, and I was like, are you talking about working somewhere? Or are you talking about like hoeing beans?
I kind of took it to meant in more of like a freelancer way, that he was like, I did like 6 weeks of work, like either like
like I did
doing
graphic
construction, like
design.
I did graphic design. I like painted someone's house, but like also like worked at this random newspaper, because he was a writer too, and he went to Harvard. And then I think he was like, so I like saved up, and that was just like the money I had. He was like, so I had this like $30 that I could buy some like clapboards with, and the beans, and
the classic, the beans. There was a lot of ideas that, I mean, I have to give my respect to Thoreau. Okay. But I was just like, you are so annoying. Can I just say I expected. I feel like I was like, I had a sense that you were gonna like him better than me.
Yeah, I mean, I had that sense too reading it.
Because you are a man who also likes to kind of spit out hot takes.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, he who needs to eat too many beans shall need to like go kill himself over a muskrat.
Yeah. No, I mean, this book, it's quite the polemic in the beginning. And there's many points where he says stuff where you're just like, so true. He predicted Instacart. I don't know if you caught that.
His thing about this is the food thing where I was like anti, but also he was right, where he was like, the man who like needs so many preserved meats and beans and fish and like who's basically hungrier, it's because he works so hard that he needs to eat more. But he was like, if you work less, you're not going to be like hungry for so much like muskrat, like ribeye.
And it's true.
You're just going to need like 3 huckleberries, which is like my diet, which is like, again, he is like prototype indie Harvard vegan.
Like thin guy.
And like he isn't vegan because he's like, oh, it's cruel to eat an animal. He's more just like, why go through all that? Like, just so you can have this prize of meat. Like, I can eat potatoes and be full and it's way less work.
And you're kind of like, well, I mean, that is true.
Because when I have a hard day at cleaning,
the last thing you want to do is go hunt a woodchuck.
No, I was going to say I'm a lot hungrier. So then I'm filling up, you know?
Yeah, for the next day. But that's the rat race. You know what I mean? And the rat race is just like, the more you put in, yes, the more you get out, but then the more you have to put back in.
Exactly.
And it never ends.
And then I have to get all these, just like now I have to get like 5 Indian burritos to, satisfy myself after this long day of work.
And I think, that's really the core thrust of this book, and it really rings true. I think as our producer Liam was just saying, I think the like what was once the contrarian view is now the kind of mainstream view of Thoreau, which is that he's a hypocrite because his mother did his laundry, and he's this mama's boy, trustafarian homesteader. And I will say that I feel like, he's honest about that. He literally says in the book that he did not do his laundry. He
could be a little more honest.
I mean, he's not being this absolutist who's being just like, I'm so proud of the fact that I like kill deer and that I like tan hides and that I wash my clothes and I live. He's kind of just like, I'm simplifying and I'm building this cabin and I'm sitting
it's about
out
simple stuff.
Sitting out by the lake for hours, like doing nothing all day. And like, yes, I'm going home for my mom to do my laundry because just like, well, why not? She's going to do it.
I want to read the
which
part.
Which I feel like kind of like makes sense for his philosophy, because his philosophy is just like, we don't need to be like trying so hard.
So, yes.
You know, let's all just take a breath here.
I did love this quote, and this was about actually prize hunting. Because as you know, we're anti-poacher on this pod.
He's yeah.
Is he said, oh, like, do you think you're so noble because you killed a giraffe? And then says, the most noble thing you can do, shoot yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Which I found kind of like goth.
That was goth of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are parts where he's like very like anti-hunting. But there's the whole part where he's very anti, like, I think what we think of as like a cosmopolitan bon vivant lifestyle of like travel and experiences and adventure. And he's just like, you're so desperate. And he like kind of like, you know, has an indictment of colonialism in there too, because he's like, people want to go across the oceans and conquer new lands, but it's just like, why don't you conquer the mind, bitch?
But no, the whole thing is like conquered the mind, if I will.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, I do agree with, and then I'm also like, shut up at the same time.
Because you're just like, I do want to go to restaurants.
I'm like, I want to go to restaurants. I want to shop. Oh, by the way, I feel like he's very anti-Irish. He's very Irish.
He does call them like a weaker race
at
one point.
He's always like, he's so Irish, need not apply. And like, is always been like, oh, this shanty Irishman was like soaked in like in Walden Pond. And I said, this was his whole thing about like how it's better to have less clothes and how poor people have more clothes.
Well, okay, but this is so true, though.
Which is kind of true.
It's like anytime I'm watching that show, The Home Edit, and like there's the celebrity house and then there's the poor, like the normie house. The normie house is so, there's
much
hoarders
more stuff
and there's so much stuff.
Well, because it's like you are like, oh, I need stuff. So you're getting like cheaper stuff to be like, oh, this will make us like feel better. And a rich person gets one thing that costs $1 million.
Yeah. Well, it's also, though, I think like the aesthetics of wealth are.
And also they have, it's also just like
minimalist.
Rich people have storage units.
I don't know if storage units are so rich. I feel like storage units are kind of classically middle class.
I think like they have archives. They're not calling them storage units. They're called archives.
Okay, that's really specific to like female celebrities only.
Yeah.
I just literally think of like J-Lo going to her storage unit.
She definitely has one. Like, she's not even managing
She's like,
it.
Ben, will you run by my storage unit in Coral Gables?
Yes, and Ben is, and it's like, is designed by someone else.
He's very storage unit.
Right, and he's from Best. So this Irish thing is, he says this, he has this Irishman, after like a storm or whatever, come into his house, and he's like, and he had pantaloon after pantaloon on it. He's covered in pantaloons. And then here I was coming to the studio soaked. And I was like, okay, here I am, this shanty Irishman.
Yeah.
My pantaloons are soaked. And then I read this article about how this entire boat of Irish immigrants died.
Because they had too many clothes?
Well, shanty Irish. So they're on a boat and it was supposed to land at Cape Cod.
Right. The double landing or whatever.
Yeah, and the waves, it tossed them back and forth. They all died on the shores. Thoreau comes along, sees all these dead Irish people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what he says? I don't feel bad for the people. I feel bad for the waves. For having to toss all these people back and forth.
Those like, poor waves having to deal with the Irish. Yeah, I mean, it's rude. He has some sassy opinions, for sure.
Which is, I also love the sass.
I love the sass. Well, that's why it's also, I think, ironic. So towards the end of the book, like, he gets very lesbian and anti-gossip. But then, because he's always going into Concord and just being like, and the villagers, as usual, were gossiping. They sit all day, like, on the street.
Gossip. And if you've been to modern day Concord, to think of it also as such a, like, gossipy town. But it's like that's where, Little Women.
And this is actually, because this is so interesting. So, the landscape of exurban Boston, like Concord and Lexington, has changed so much, like Lincoln as well. Like, and the guy who annotated the book, the version I read, which is very like for students, like did note, and I will give Bill McKibben credit for noting
Snaps
this. Thank
to
you.
Bill McKibben.
That Concord is actually more rural now than it was in Thoreau's day.
He talks about it like it's literally Boston.
It's a bustling village center. And
Concord is bustling. I'll say that for a suburb.
Yeah, I mean, define bustle, but like...
Okay, I will define bustle for you. I mean, there's a cafe, there's multiple coffee shops, there's
There's the thinking cup, there's the laughing cup.
And then, of course, there's all the little monuments. I've stayed at the Concord Hotel where all the Revolutionary men stayed.
Oh, and it's like such an old-fashioned colonial hotel where it's like so creaky, but it's like $3.75 a night.
Yes, I got busy at the Concord Hotel.
And were you a Minuteman, if you know what I mean? But here's what's interesting now. It's because of the development of agriculture. Right?
Yes.
So agriculture used to be this thing where it's like the town commons, like Boston Common was called that because people would be grazing their animals, like pigs and cows would be there. And so and the town center was where people were doing their livestock nonsense. Whereas nowadays with modern mass agribusiness, it's like all that's happening in the Midwest in these just like endless fields that are, quite removed from their natural state, with modern irrigation and all the rest of it. And so these little towns like Concord that used to have like a little center where people would be doing duck and pig stuff, it's now just, that one colonial hotel and some houses and whatnot.
And some shops.
Yes. There's perhaps some commerce.
Well, I would say Concord is much more bustling than Lincoln, which has really tried to I think 70% is conservation land.
Wow.
In Lincoln, you see cows, chickens, pigs, all of them grazing. And then there's a strip mall with a weird art gallery, a gift store, and a supermarket. And the art gallery is so tin sculptures with a collage over the tin.
Yeah. And and I think Thoreau would definitely be going into the town and having dinner there once a week and then going back to his cabin and mostly eating the beans that he's growing.
So another note he has about Concord that I found hilarious is at one point, did you see that part where he was like, I wish Concord had a school. He wished Concord Academy into fruition.
And then it happened.
And they were private high school.
Yeah, I mean, he was talking about how the education system is appalling. Lord, if he only knew in 2022 that our strand workers haven't even heard of him.
And that's the part I did like where he was so you're obsessed with the Oxfords and the Harvards, but we should all just be thinking everywhere.
There was a lot of honesty in this book that I really appreciated.
It's yes, he went to Harvard, but he's also and yes, there should be a school in Concord, but also you should read yourself.
Because as I said, he admits to having his mom do his laundry. He admits to when he's talking about his budgeting, because he's quite also, I love how honest he is about money. He tells you his entire budget. But then at one point he's like, to meet the objections of some inveterate cavaliers, I may as well state that if I dined out occasionally, as I always had done, and I trust I'll have opportunities to do again, it was really to the detriment of my domestic arrangements. But it's and this isn't the part about his budget, but he's just okay, so yes, I went to restaurants. I'm not insane.
I'm not crazy.
Also, in the whole beginning of the book, there's a ton of him really romanticizing the Indians and pre-Columbian tribes for their relationship to nature, but also how well they're able to construct their dwellings and the wigwams.
Yeah, and he's definitely a little bit jealous of that.
But he's also at one point he's just but girl, I'm not trying to live in a wigwam.
Yeah, forever.
And I appreciate that honesty because it's many people would be colonialism is bad and we should have never English should never come here and settled and colonized or whatever, and it's and we should celebrate wigwams. But he's being and yes, I absolutely deeply respect the wigwam, but also I am used to creature comforts of a house with
except for
and I'm not trying to live in a wigwam.
He's I'm not trying to live in a wigwam. I want a small house. But then he is being Filson Carhart bearded guy when he was how sad for you if a man needs to get furniture
from
a furniture warehouse. Do you have that page?
Wait, no. Well, this is the part where he says Asian shit is faggy.
Oh, yeah. He was like,
this is the most.
And he's like,
Yes.
I'm not going to get some
Wait,
gorgeous
hold on.
Oriental.
No. This part is insane. He literally says having Asian decor makes you a faggot. There's a lot of masculinity stuff in this book. Okay. I think that in the railroad car, we are inclined to spend more on. He's talking about also how like railroad cars like too fancy.
Yeah, he's really
so,
anti-railroad, and it's like, okay, get friends.
Well, I also think the irony is that nowadays an environmentalist would be very pro-railroad and anti-car.
Yes.
But railroads are the cars of their day. I think that a railroad car, we are inclined to spend more on luxury than on safety and convenience. And it threatens, without attaining these, to become no better than a modern drawing room, with its divans and ottomans and sunshades and 100 other oriental things, which we are taking west with us, invented for the ladies of the harem and the effeminate natives of the Celestial Empire, which Jonathan should be ashamed to know the names of. So Jonathan, my book points out, was meant like the typical American.
That's what I thought. He's being so Joe Sixpack about it, because he's always saying Jonathan.
So Jonathan means Joe Sixpack, and he's like, and also I know that celestial means Asian, which I know because
what? Because
my
your game,
my sort of old money boyfriend, ex-boyfriend.
Oh yes,
his grandmother would refer to Asians as celestials.
Stop.
So that's how I knew he meant that.
And they were like so Pilgrim and Mayflower.
They were so Mayflower. So he's being like literally the effeminate natives of the Celestial Empires. Only they can know what Ottomans are. If you're Joe Sixpack and you know what an Ottoman is, you are gay. You are literally a faggot.
And then he's like, so it's like that. And then he's like, but even if you're ordering also like from an IKEA catalog, like you are not a real man.
But then again, I'm like, if you heard a man say the word Ottoman today, like, would you maybe not raise an eyebrow?
No, to be like, oh, you know what I need? An Ottoman.
Like, it is kind of gay.
Yeah, that's like fully gay. To be like, oh, nice Ottoman, man. Dude, that's a sick Ottoman. Can I rest my feet on it?
Dude, I love that textured throw.
Celebrity Book Club.
I think he is solo poly. Okay, he talks about having guests over.
Okay, yes. And I'm just like, there's
Who
always
are the
like,
guests?
there's always these like drifters and boarders and local farmers and like local railroad workers.
It's a lot of men. Okay, a lot of shanty Irish men that he thinks, you know, aka like the trade.
Yeah.
And or like older guys, it's like, or he'll be like, oh, and he was fishing for eel in Walden Pond, and yes, then he came over and we split some of my unleavened bread, just a little bit of it, and then he literally says the phrase, "This is the poly part for me." I've had 30 souls in my house once.
Oh, okay. That is so poly. 30 souls.
Today,
30
36
amazing
souls.
humans.
Today, 30, and then this was also so poly and like fucked up
but
potluck, where he's like, if I have one person over, I'll make a meal, like I'll make my random bread and we'll share it. But I have 30 people over, I'm like not going to make them a meal.
And he's like assuming that they're going to potluck. I mean, first of all, you can't make like beans for 30 people. Like
talk to some poly people, I think you can.
But then you're just doing this huge pot of beans. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the most like
and the
group
house. But like, what was this standing party he referred to? Because at one point when he's like, I have 3 chairs.
Yeah, he's like one to like sit.
No, it was like 1 for solitude, 2 for company, 3 for society.
It's like, what? The 3 chairs were so crazy.
That's what's also kind of like, there's something a little bit almost like closeted about him, where I'm like, would you have gone into the Peace Corps if it was 2022?
He's doing
you know what I mean?
Everything not to get fucked up the butt.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, at a certain point, I was just like, are you ever horny? But it'll also be that thing where when you write a book, you never mention how horny you are.
Right, because he's like, that's for like lady folk of the town bustle to write about.
Those are just like celestial men with their ottomans.
I just feel he was also just like staring at a woodchuck jerking off.
Well, yeah, because when he says like, so in the mornings, I would just like
bathe,
sunbathe, nude, wonderful sunbathe.
Yes, he's like, my man must bathe in Walden Pond. It feels
then
so
I would
good.
kind of like lounge in my society chair for like 2 hours and like do nothing, and like the sun's streaming in and I'm hearing in the songs of the birds.
Oh, that was the other thing that I was like, this is him being so afraid of being gay, is like things he thinks like interfere, you need to look within, and they like interfere with like true happiness and like true purity. Music, wine, coffee, tea, shopping, gossip.
Yeah.
His big six, I guess. And it's like, when he was like, why do you need to listen to music when you can hear a loon?
Well, okay. Sometimes I do want to hear the loon. Like, this comes back to my vacation in Panama when that German couple was like playing Rammstein.
Like
and
a
I was
small...
like, can we please hear like the parrots and not your Bluetooth Rammstein? Like,
and I guess I stood up for that German couple having sex to Rammstein, because I just think that's so, if you're that German and need to listen to Rammstein to fuck, you should.
No, I mean, obviously, like, who are you in the book? I'm Thoreau, and you're like this town gossip who's just like blasting fiddle.
Yeah. and like I'm fucking the wet Irishman, and like Thoreau comes to town for his beans and is like, oh, me? No, I'm not staying for dinner. I'm going back to my cabin to sit in my thinking chair.
But I do think it just did make me wonder. I was like, did you do the part where he does that whole kind of weird like play with the hermit?
Yes.
There's this like little dialogue, this back and forth of him and a hermit. The hermit gets so much more like sexual agency and like eroticism than any other character in the book. Like, yes, certainly any woman in the book.
He could be gay and so closeted, or I think he could be also classic, nerdy Massachusetts man who's just so afraid of rejection from a woman.
Yes.
And to open himself up, that he's just doing kind of everything in his power. Oh, I'm too distracted by loons. Oh, I'm too distracted by hoeing.
Yeah. And my beans, my
beans.
acres of beans.
And because it's like very vegan straight guy to be like, oh, I'd rather like buffalo potatoes than like have a good meat.
Why do you need anything more? Also, this is like a weird play where it's like a poet and a hermit, but like obviously he's the poet. Poet, see those clouds, how they hang. Phallus, anyone? That's the greatest thing I've seen today. There's nothing like it in old paintings, nothing in the foreign lands, unless when we were off the coast of Spain. I thought, as I have my living to get, I have not eaten today, that I might go a-fishing. That's the true industry for poets. It's the only trade I've learned. Come, let's along. And then the hermit goes, I cannot resist. My brown bread will soon be gone. I will go with you gladly soon. And you're kind of like, okay, so we're going fishing together.
Yeah. Which also is this kind of reverse thing of like, fishing really is a sport that brings men together. You know, it's not just, because hunting I feel like is a little more centered of like, you know, redneck stuff. And I feel
but it's also quite posh in England. Like the whole hunting culture is like the dogs and the pigeons and the plates and whatever.
But in America, I feel like
it is more redneck, yeah.
But with fishing, I feel like it's like you can be a little more like, I'm a poet fishing, or I'm like also so like Luke Bryan, I'm on my like huge boat getting tuna.
I mean, fishing allows for fishing is all about the words unsaid. I mean, it's Brokeback Mountain, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas hunting, there's a little bit too much to do.
Yes. Fishing is just you sit there and you have to think.
Yes.
And listen and get up early.
And that is, I think, in many ways, so much more erotic than hunting. Because it's like hunting is too like superficially vulgar.
Obvious. You have the big gun.
The hunt, the gun, right? I'm killing my prey. I'm dominating, right? Whereas fishing, you have to like sit there interrogating your own desires and letting them surface and dissipate. And it's terrifying.
Well, and people always describe the feeling of fishing as heartbreak.
Chills. Absolute chills.
It's never about conquest. It's always like setting yourself up for a broken heart. Okay, this part I really agreed with about the post office.
Wait, yes.
Yes, he was
I
like,
agree that too. He was like, why the fuck?
He was like, why the post office? And he was like, think about it. I've only gotten 2 letters in my life worth their postage.
I was like, girl, amen.
Yeah, literally amen.
I wrote down, girl, if you only knew. Because now because it's like, remember there was that whole like when the post office became a liberal cri de coeur because like Trump was getting rid of it.
And we were all like, and everyone was like, buy merch off the post office merch.
Buy post office bucket hats.
And
like,
girls were wearing like post office long sleeves.
And it's like
and it was
mailbox selfies. And then it's like everyone forgot about that. And now it's like, oh, right. All the post office does is give you like credit card offers and trash. It's just pure trash. His mail was always just being like, you're shipping off to go fight in a war, or like your fiance is dead. Like it was always just like pretty serious.
Yeah.
I did detect a tinge of jealousy.
Yeah, where it's like,
no one ever sends me letters.
sends me anything.
Did you clock that he's pro open floor plan? Because he's talking about like how it's like.
I guess I assume yes, because his cabin is one room.
It's definitely. But he's talking about how just like it's just so every couple in House Hunters where they're just like, I want to be able to see my guests like while I'm cooking.
While I'm chopping.
Nowadays, the host does not admit you to his hearth, but has gotten the mason to build one for yourself somewhere in his alley. And hospitality is the art of keeping you at the greatest distance. There's as much secrecy about the cooking as if he had it designed to poison you. And it's just like, oh, yeah, the host is always like toiling away over his cauldron and you're just like in the drawing room. And it's like, he's like, what about an open floor plan?
What if we could talk?
Yeah.
Well, which is funny because I feel like the way he talks about conversation, his definition of gossip is quite wide. He refers to the Boston newspaper as gossip.
Yeah.
He refers to just like any conversation that happens in Concord as gossip.
And then he's like, yeah, and like sometimes when like people would come over and they would talk to me about like other places that they had been or people that they had met who had been to like Ohio or London. And all they wanted to talk about was clothes and manners. And I'm just kind of like, that's fun. And like, that's literally funny. And like, also, bitch, like you're also talking about clothes. You have an entire chapter about clothes.
About clothes. So it's like,
and like how you think that this is the best clothing because you love your like worn ass peacoat. So it's just like what am I supposed to talk about with you? It's like, yes, I'm here for you. Like, yes, we should stop door dashing. But I'm just like, people are coming over like, yes, they want to talk about like how they went to London, and you're being like, oh, this is just poppycock and gossip.
And it's like,
why don't we discuss truth?
And it's like, is your truth that like
you're gay?
You're gay? It's like, that's why he's so afraid of any sort of conversation, because then the actual truth will have to come out.
Yes.
And it's like those people, they've seen Walden Pond. Like, you can't have an entire dinner talking about a pond. You know, it's
and yet, I mean, I will say, I guess that's where this book, really does prove its mettle, because it's like, there is all the like polemic sections, but like the vast majority of this book is
straight up pond.
It's straight up pond.
I'll say it, pond gossip.
It's pond gossip. It's like, no, I mean, the whole section about the ants at war, which I loved, was gossip about ants fighting that he saw.
It was very cool. It's like he's watching these ants at war. But it's like, oh, that's not gossip, because it's like your little boy brain talking about like ants fighting.
Yeah. He needs to go to therapy with your mom.
With my mom. And okay, let's talk about fashion. That's the civil disobedience. He was arrested at the Cobblers. He's the original like, New Hampshire live free or die for not paying taxes.
He went to the cobbler to
and
like,
they
pick
got
up a
him
shoe.
there. Yes.
Oh, and they knew he was going there because he had a shoe to get.
Yes, and they arrested him there.
Wait.
And he spent a night in jail.
If only he knew how massive the government had gotten. I mean, he would be aghast at modern society.
Absolutely aghast.
But then it's like because, I mean, he's very van life.
He's van life. He's cabin porn.
Like, and he's just like, build your tiny house and like, whatever, it all comes back to that. Although he would probably think that those tiny house people being like,
right, because he was like, if they knew they had a show about a tiny house, he'd be like, you're bragging about your tiny house.
Yeah. So Lily's stepmother has an organization that is anti-lawnmower, mostly because of the sound they make, but also the pollution. And the organization is called Quiet Communities.
And it is based in Lincoln,
which is right next door to Concord.
So you can imagine why, she and my father were into Walden, into Thoreau.
Yes, into the concept of simplifying. And, quite frankly, we certainly don't need...
Well, I mean, which is true, because, I mean, the
intensity of the lawnmowers.
Or
the frequency.
The leaf blowers.
The leaf blowers especially.
And, a lot, I think it came from basically...
What's so bad about a few leaves, first of all?
Well, yeah. Aren't you in New England for that reason?
Yes.
The leaves. And these companies will hire a lawn maintenance company and say, you just have to leaf blow for a certain amount of time.
Right.
6 hours.
And this comes back...
And then it's just going and going. I mean, we were at your beautiful home in Nantucket.
Right.
and they were leaf blowing and mowing for 900 hours. And this is not against the men, of course, doing the work.
Right. But I think it dovetails quite accurately with Thoreau's whole concept, which is just like, once again, this is a rat race. It's like they're doing this work because they've been hired to do this work, and they have to do X amount of hours of this pointless work so that they can get paid. And then the people are paying them because they feel that their yards have to be cleaned to keep up with the Joneses.
And then the men who are mowing for so long then need to eat a lot of meat afterwards.
And, one thing this book made me consider, of course, because, he really does indict the concept of status and how so much of what we attempt to attain in this life is because of our attempts to achieve status, right? And we want, that's the thing. It's like, obviously, we both love shopping, but you see, it's like, do you really need this? To keep up with the Jones? And we want to look a certain way. We want our homes to look a certain way.
We want all these, celestial.
We want these celestial ottomans, and we strive and we toil and toil and toil to pay the rent, so that one day, hopefully, we might be a landlord ourselves.
Oh yeah, isn't that the greatest?
And we live in this tiny box, so maybe one day we can own a bigger box with more ottomans, and yet, of course, as I'm reading this, I'm like, the idea that he is immune to the lure of status, I think is ridiculous. Right? This is a man who went to Harvard.
Why go to Harvard? Why publish a book?
Why publish a book?
Though, I will say this.
Okay.
He published Walden and Civil Disobedience, and I think only one other thing.
Okay, so he wasn't desperately trying to...
He was shooting out bestsellers here and there, but yeah, it's like, I think this...
You don't think he was trying to achieve so much fame?
I relate to him in this way, where as someone who also went to multiple private schools, is like, then you're kind of like angry at the private schools. You're like, why are we all striving to pay money to go to these places? For what?
No, it is a rat race.
It's a rat race. Oh, so you can say, I went to the school, and then what?
And then you can get a job that pays a ton of money, and you work a 60-hour a week, so you can afford the rent on your apartment.
And the Ottomans.
And then to send your child to an expensive school so they can make a lot of money to send their, and it's just like, where does it end, and what is the point of all of it? And are you really any happier than a man who does nothing and sits in his doorway?
And jerks off to a woodchuck. And then just one other thing I wrote here that I did love, that is kind of foodie, even though he's like just into the random beans he eats. He says New Englanders should learn some new crops. He was kind of like, stop being boring and sowing all the same old crops you've been sowing.
Yeah. No, he drags everyone in this.
So
he's
like,
dragging the Concordians, he's dragging the English, he drags the Spanish.
The Irish for sure.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It's like, yes, he is being like, I'm only going to eat potatoes. But then it's also like, maybe like, I don't know, grow a new tomato.
I guess, and this is, we did mention this earlier, but just to read the actual quote, because there's something quite beautiful about this. Nay, be a Columbus to whole new continents and worlds within you, opening new channels, not of trade, but of thought. Every man is the lord of a realm beside which the earthly empire of the Tsar is but a pretty state, a hummock left by the ice. Just that celebration of imagination. And it made me think of another New England writer, Emily Dickinson. There's something kind of...
Lonely New England people.
There's something profoundly antisocial about it. And yet it doesn't feel... I guess there's something nice about it, too. It doesn't feel antisocial in the, like, super sad, like, alienated way that...
No, after reading, like, times. The Unabomber, that's more modern. Yes. But it's a different type of... Well, I think New England has a lot of romanticism to it. And
yes.
I'm not just saying that because we are from New England, but...
Well, and it's, in terms of the post-Columbian era, it's one of the few places in the country where there's any history, darling.
Celebrity Book Club.
Segment Pond.
What does she eat? What does she wear?
How does she live?
What does she eat?
She loves huckleberries.
And beans.
And beans. And so this is also what's so like pandemic about him is that he was like, I really studied like the art of bread making and I looked up so many ancient recipes and like he is being upstate girl. Like,
and he's also put his whole thing about Indian meal and he's like, it's actually really good and I always get like the Indian like cornmeal from my like local shop.
No, it's not just like regular American flour. Like Indian meal is like, it's a little more coarse, but it's so it comes out a really good texture. And so that's like his main thing is bread.
And
baking his own, and then like if he does have guests,
he's a total carb slut.
Right? They'll come over for his
over for this either this 2-person seated event or the 30-person standing party. Which is more like past hors d'oeuvres of like leavened bread and beans.
And I feel like he discovers sourdough at one moment where he's like, oh, and then it started like fermenting a little and like.
I feel like he does mention he was like, and then this startup came over from the Mayflower and like, girl, we've been passing that shit around like a blunt ever since. Like,
I remember we went to Mission Chinese once and we got the pizza, which was like the off menu thing.
Right.
And I remember young me, guest of the pod, told us that like the starter from that pizza.
Oh, like that like lamb pizza that was so good.
I don't know if it was a lamb pizza or it was just like a pepperoni.
Okay.
But the starter it was the sourdough pizza and it was like from some famous bakery in San Francisco and had been going since like the 60s or something like that. Yeah.
No, I mean the stories that starters could tell.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Starter.
What does he wear?
A
few simple garments.
Simple garments and he gets them fixed and mending is something everyone should learn.
Okay, wait. Did you the part where he was like, I think tattoos are better than clothes because at least tattoos last forever. He was like, a man with many tattoos is actually like more morally upstanding than a man with so many pantaloons.
So who was so tatted? Like the Irish sailors?
Yeah, were all these Irish getting like Sailor Jerry tats in 1854?
I know it'd be so shamrock.
I just feel like, it's a lot of gray. A lot of gray wool
and black. I think like a pea coat.
Which is also very like beatnik of him.
Well, I'm thinking again of my high school in neighboring Weston. A lot of the indie guys would do pea coat, black skinny jeans, little black shoes. But I was like looking up these drawings of him and like he did have some like, a white shirt under and a big collar, but it was, I think peacoat stuff. So I guess this is a little more how does she live as we segue into it. He is Buddha. He's always talking about Hinduism.
He loves Hinduism.
Yeah.
No, I mean, he's obsessed with Eastern philosophy.
So I think if he was around today, he would have like a small stone Buddha outside.
Yep. Absolutely. 100%. He would be like, and 1 week out of the year, I sleep on a tatami mat.
Yes. And he'd be like, it's tatami week and I'm resetting. And he would have a lot of books, but like not so many. Because I feel like he'd be very library.
Because he's like, I don't accumulate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I buy that. You don't think he's so like Fran Lebowitz and just like floor to ceiling?
I know that's what I first thought. Because the thing is,
don't you think he is?
I know with like the ladder and it's like coming to his library and I guess he is and they're all like
I think now especially because just like books are so like forgotten and abandoned in our society.
He'd be like, save our books.
Save the books. Because he does have that part where he anthropomorphizes his furniture when he cleans it. When he's like, when my floor is dirty, I take all the furniture out, put pond water and sand all over the floor and like scrub it. And he's like, and then I gazed upon my 3-legged stool. Like, I thought it might enjoy the fresh air for a bit and seemed like it did not want to return to the inside. I'm like, okay, like Julio Torres, like talking
like
about
story about
a chair.
So I guess he would be floor to ceiling Buddha. I think a low bed, medium.
I think medium bed because like it needs like there's like so many like wasps and like termites in there probably.
He is also definitely like I would say very like Ditmas dad also or something like it's in this way where it's like he has like a faded dad hat.
also think because today he would be like so tiny house, and like those are usually high beds because there's so much like storage. And
Oh,
like,
true. And he needs like such a storage system underneath.
yeah. For his like growlers of like non-alcoholic mead or whatever he's brewing.
Yeah, his 0.0 mead. It's like, because he does drink, but then he's always like, you are a loser if you drink. And like, then he's just like, oh, you need coffee in the morning? You need tea after dinner? Try looking within. And it's like, fuck off.
Have one berry.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like, we do, these things are crutches.
No, I slammed a Vietnamese iced coffee and then got like Midtown fast casual Indian.
Sounds like you had some
Before the
Midtown
pot.
fast casual diarrhea.
No,
before
I
the
know. And I
pot.
was like, this is a crazy decision. Why am I like just inhaling all these things that I think I need?
I don't need these things.
But I needed food. I was hungry.
Yeah. Maybe you didn't need the full iced coffee.
I don't think I needed the Vietnamese iced
so much
coffee.
sugar.
Oh, they're so yummy.
Anyway, who are you in the book?
book?
As we stated, you are the town gossip.
The down gossip. I'm bustling about. I'm just like seeing him get arrested at the cobbler, like texting like on a scroll.
No, you're sending so many letters at the post office.
Oh yeah, I have a huge stack of letters because it's my texting to like all
your other chicas like in Quincy, just being like
Quincy and Braintree and
like, ooh, like you're gonna hear all about this faggot who's building a cabin at the pond.
And they're like, well, Miss Murata, and they like give me like a duffel of my letters, and I'm just like, fuck yes.
And then I'm just like coming to the town to do my wash and fold once a week. And I'm seeing you be like, oh, there she is again.
Letter girl.
With all her letters. Oh, gab, gab, gab.
Okay, but aren't you also just like a rich guy in Concord who has like so many like ancient Chinese dressers?
I know. No, I am swathed.
And I'm going to your house and I'm like, you have to read this letter.
I'm swathed in ottomans. I'm drowning in ottomans.
We're both like, that guy is so sketchy. And you're like, but he's kind of like hot.
He's like hot. Oh, you know that way he's like lanky, like whatever. Wait, I actually
Dumbo ears.
I see his total Dumbo ears. I'm gonna actually just like do one of my morning walks and like accidentally run into him bathing. And you're like, you're sick. Tell me all about it. All right. Well, I honestly, I thought this book was honest. It was beautiful. I give this book 4 out of 5 bushels of bean for sale at $2.06.
I gotta give it to him. He really started a lot of thought. Okay.
Yeah.
He put Walden on the map.
Yeah.
He put, being an indie guy with a cabin on the map. So, I mean, just for that, I give this 4 eels who are no longer inhabitants of Walden Pond out of 5 former winged cats.
Because of pollution and overfishing.
I think him and all of his little imaginary friends were overfishing all the eels.
I do feel like I will say, I guess this book isn't even taught in schools anymore, but like, if I'd read this in middle school or high school, I don't think I would have really like gotten it, because it's like reading this now is like,
you need to like be an adult who does overindulge in things,
right?
I think.
Who overindulges and also just like works to pay rent and is just like, oh, like the world is boring and why like do we do this? It's like, as a 35-year-old, like barely employed like freelancer, I was like, oh, like this book is really like making a lot of sense. And I feel like if you're just like a 16-year-old.
Like, I was annoyed by him now. I would have been so annoyed by him then. I would have been like, get off it. This is so boring. I mean, also reading this, like, hot day before, just like on Labor Day weekend was such flashbacks to me trying to finish the Communist Manifesto before school started in high school that I chose as my summer reading because I wanted to be. No, I was like, oh, I'm so punk. I'm gonna
not
choose.
Because it was short. You were like,
I was like, and all my friends made fun of me. They're like, you're really gonna like read the Communist Manifesto, and I was like, yeah, I'm literally punk. Sorry,
I'm like a total anarchist badass. Like, sorry, I don't believe in your fucking capitalist system, dude. And they're like, so Lily, what do you believe in? You're like, I'm getting to it.
Obviously, I like never finished it. So yeah. All right. Well, Club Kids, this has been
another
amazing episode.
Amazing episode.
I love talking about books.
I love talking about books, and thank you for sharing it with us. And we'll see you soon.
See you soon. Keep reading.
And keep swimming in ponds. Best.
Celebrity Book Club is presented by Prologue Projects. The show is produced by Benjamin Frisch, with editorial support from Leon Nafok, Andrew Parsons, Arlena Revelo, and Madeline Kaplan. Our production manager is Percia Verlin. Our intern is Noah John. Original theme song by Stephen Phillips Horst. Artwork by Teddy Blanks at Chips NY.